Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for June 14th, 2022. As always, of course, we acknowledge our elected officials, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Peter Vanstrom, Council Member Lee Hills. The purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published and upcoming agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, city council members, and city administrator. The ordinance does mandate the city administrator serve as the chair of committee meetings. And while this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by the mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month and the fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms. If you have any questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is always available to provide that information to you. I would encourage the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. The city web service portal is a mechanism to report concerns. Last night, we had the second reading, public hearing, and adoption of the FY 2023 budget. And I certainly want to commend the mayor and council for all of the hard work that was instilled in the budget. We appreciate the mayor's leadership, his business acumen, which was brought forward in the budget process, which accounted for a very successful budget and a unanimous approval. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for May 10th, 2022. I will entertain a motion of approval. Yes.
Motion to approval, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor, yes, thank you. Motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you so much. Passes unanimously. Under Public Works, item number 2, discussion of partnership with Keep Roswell Beautiful. All right. Sharon, Brian.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This item is to discuss the partnership with Keep Roswell Beautiful. As you know, the nonprofits had an opportunity to talk with you during our budget process, and Keep Roswell Beautiful did not. And so this is a nice opportunity to talk with Keep Roswell Beautiful, talk about roles and responsibilities, and our memorandum of understanding is attached for your review and consideration. Recently, at the beginning of May, Nikki Belmonte, who had been serving as the Executive Director and Environmental Education Coordinator for Environmental Public Works, moved on to a new opportunity, so we're in the position of needing to fill that role. And before we do that, we wanted you all to have an opportunity to talk about the partnership and ask any questions you might have. In her absence, Deputy Director Brian Watson has been filling in, so I'm going to ask him to introduce the members of Keep Roswell Beautiful that are here this evening with a short presentation for you.
Oh goodness, I have to get everyone's name right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we will have Michael Mulling, who is the chairperson at the end of the table here of Keep Roswell Beautiful. He'll say a few words. We've got Nancy Womack, two from me, and Michelle Vincent, who will be doing the presentation for Keep Roswell Beautiful. And then if all the other members of Keep Roswell Beautiful raise your hand. We've got Rebecca Gilbert, Rip Campbell, and Brett. Yeah, he's a Gator. I'm sorry? Oh. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Keep Roswell Beautiful do a short presentation for you all, and then we'll take questions from Mayor and Council.
So just awarded to. Oh, good. Okay. Let me begin by introducing myself. I'm Michael Mulling. I'm the board chair for Keep Roswell Beautiful here. And I'm currently serving on the board along as a member. We are a 50C3 nonprofit organization that is an affiliate of Keep Georgia Beautiful. We have a long history with the city of Roswell going back to the year 1994. And we cherish our partnership with the city of Roswell. Thank you and our gratitude to the council members, to the mayor, and to all who are present today for allowing us a few minutes of your precious time to tell you a little bit about our organization and how we work with the city of Roswell to keep Roswell conserved and preserved and keep its natural resources beautiful. Again, thank you to each of the council members. I have their names written here, so I'm going to name first to the mayor, Mayor Kurt Wilson. Thank you, sir. To Marcelo Zapata, I know he's missing, but thank you to him. To Mike Palermo, Post 2. To Council Member Christine Hall, Post 3. To Peter Vanstrom, Post 4. To William Morthland, Post 5. And to Council Member Lee Hills, Post 6. Congratulations to all the existing members who were reelected, and congratulations to the new council members who are part of Roswell. We look forward to working with you as leaders of our community in your role as a leadership with our city, and you have our full support as Keep Roswell Beautiful in your endeavors along with ours. We want to, today, some of our board members are going to take a few minutes, Michelle Vincent, Nancy Womack, to give you a little information on our story and the plans that we have made and the programs that we share with the city of Roswell, our longtime and cherished partner in these works and efforts. An additional thanks to Michelle Miller, who helped me today with some logistics of the meeting. A thank you also to the to Mr. Randy Knighton for being here. Thank you also to Deputy Attorney Michael Petty. And again, we look forward to working with you. We hope you enjoy this presentation today, and we welcome any questions that you would have. Thank you again.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I am the newest board member for Keep Roswell Beautiful, but I've been around the longest. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history about this organization, which actually started in 1992. I've been a director for local Keep America Beautiful affiliates for the city of Macon, which was the first one in the country. And then I came back to Atlanta, which is my hometown, Fulton County, and served as the executive director for Fulton County. While I was working for Fulton County, I facilitated donating the land, the agreement that the city and the county had to put the recycling center on the corner of that property that used to be the old camp. You know, y'all know what I'm talking about. Somebody around here knows what I'm talking about, the old campground over there. Anyways, so while I was working for the county, I helped write the job description for the city of Roswell, for this position, for the executive director, when they decided that they were going to actually implement and move forward with the program. Well, it just so happened that a few days after it was approved at city council, the mayor, they called me and asked me to fill that position. So I came to work for the city in 1992 as the first executive director for Keep Roswell Beautiful. You're hired. I'm on the board now. It's not the first time I've heard that, too. That's funny. So I stayed here until 98, when there was a lot of transition in the city with the new mayor and new council. It was a turbulent time then. And I went to work for the company that was purchasing the paper from the recycling center, and that's where I still work today. And we still purchase all the paper from the recycling center. We've got a great relationship with them, so we're grateful for that opportunity, too. So that is some of the history. Let me tell you about one of our first efforts was the curbside recycling program in 1992, which it was all the volunteers from Keep Roswell Beautiful. Those were the people that went out and hung all the door hangers, got the participation, people encouraged, excited about the curbside recycling program. And we had a 98% participation rate right off the bat. They didn't even know how to handle it. And I believe that it was really because of the commitment from the volunteers in the community that rallied around it. You know what? That was the name of it, Rally Round Recycling Roswell. Some of you may remember that. After we started the curbside recycling, we went on to do the curbside composting program. These were all partnerships. They were initiatives from the city, but they were partnerships with Keep Roswell Beautiful. It was the volunteers who got behind it and pushed these city efforts. So I just want to make sure that we got that out of the way. And also, Michael mentioned that we are part of Keep Georgia Beautiful, and we're a local affiliate for Keep America Beautiful. This organization, Keep Roswell Beautiful, has won several awards from Keep Georgia Beautiful and from the national affiliates. I took a contingency of Roswell High School students to Washington one year because they figured out a way to recover all of their milk cartons. So I want to express that because that's the foundation of what the Keep America Beautiful program is about community involvement in partnering with the city to raise awareness, and to make things happen. And that's what we plan. That's what we have been doing, and that's what we plan on doing. And I'm grateful that they let me come on the board. Like I said, I'm new to the board. So we complement each other. So the year of 2021 was a whole year of renewal. We doubled our board members. We were up to 14. We're down to 12 right now. With Rip Campbell's help, we established a more robust membership campaign to diversify our fundraising, and we have more in plans for that now. We initiated the Great American Cleanup, which I was able to participate in this year. And I'm going to tell you what, those kids from the Roswell High School band, we were at Dotsy Garner Park. They dragged us over to the Woodstock Park, and then we came over here to Smith Plantation. They had so much energy, and they were so excited about it. And they paid for the T-shirts. They did the promotions for this. So again, that was a benefit to the city, but facilitated through Keep Roswell Beautiful. And some of you may have seen this earth balloon that Keep Roswell Beautiful purchased years ago. I don't know the history on it, but I've been inside of it, and it's amazing inside of that, and the kids love it. So this is our mission. You can read the mission. And this group, having personally served as an executive director over a couple local Keep America Beautiful affiliates, and I'm still networking with them. I was just asked to be a speaker at a Keep Georgia Beautiful meeting recently. This group of people, they're committed. They're passionate. I'm excited to be a part of them, and I'm excited for them of what their future holds. And so you can see they put together, I think they already handed it out, the strategic plan. They hired somebody this past year to help them go through that process. And I think, I'm very impressed I'm so impressed with what they did that my company sponsored to have this printed for Keep Roswell Beautiful. And that's the kind of other members that we want to get, is other corporate memberships that will help sponsor things and really help, fulfill the goals of the city and our program. So that's the history. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle.
Absolutely. Do you want to?
You want me to click for you?
Sure, you can click for me. I love that. Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Vincent. I'm really glad to be here. I'm been on the board for about 15 months, so not brand new, but not an old hat either. And my day job, I'm an environmental scientist, so I wear a different hat over there. So if you want to go to the next one.
Yeah.
So, we were going to take a couple minutes just to let you know, we have kind of a really good relationship. We're in a local, Keep Roswell Beautiful is a local affiliate of Keep America Beautiful and Keep Georgia Beautiful. So we have really good connections with those folks at the state and the federal or national level. And they have some specific programs that we work with for them That appearance index is one that we do. That's like a community appearance index. So you can have a kind of a quantified way to drive around and see what litter looks like in your community, and you can compare it over years. So that's one that we do. If you want to go to the next slide. And then, of course, major relationship, of course, is with the city. So we're an official partner with the city of Roswell, and we kind of serve as the nonprofit arm of the environmental outreach activities that the city does. And we have an MOU with the city, like many Keep Georgia Beautiful affiliates. Some of them are more of a city program. Some of them are a hybrid like ours where we work together, and some of them are a standalone nonprofit. So you can see different models of that all over the state. But everywhere people work together with the municipality or with the county because our goals are so aligned in the things that we're looking for. And a lot of our programs are supported and funded jointly with both fundraising that we do and also support from the city. So if you want to click through, this is a lot, so I'm not going to go through all of this. But when we were putting together the programs which programs are Keep Roswell Beautiful, which programs are city programs or joint programs, they're so intertwined, it was sometimes hard to tease out which parts are city and which parts are Keep Roswell Beautiful. So like the Earth balloon, which you saw, is this amazing inflatable Earth that you can actually go inside and sit with 9 or 10 kids and your teacher and talk about geography or climate change or planet or whatever you want to talk about. So that's a KRB program, but the city uses it all the time for their outreach and education programs as well. So that's one that's like a really connected program together that we work together on. Same with like Adopt a Stream. That's a water quality testing program where citizen volunteers go out and test streams to see what the water quality is. You can do either chemical water quality, or you can go look at bugs to see what the water health is for that. It's a state program that the city works on, but the KRB also sponsors. So this year we got grants to provide all of the supplies for that. And I think we had something like maybe 10 new certified people, 8 or 10 new certified people, and that'll translate into probably 3 or 4 new sites. So a lot of these programs are very connected, and we cherish that. We think that's a fantastic relationship. So we can bring our passion as a board and our volunteer organization and our fundraising, and the city provides help and support with staffing and with some supplies that they purchase that we can share. So if you have questions about these, we'd be happy to answer them. I know that there's a lot on there, but in general, the blue ones are joint programs, the green ones are kind of KRB led, and then the middle ones are more like projects. The two on the bottom, the Duckling self-guided tour, that one is still in the works. We have the statues. I don't know if you folks have seen like the bulldog statues that are out, or lots of cities have a statue and you can go on a tour. Well, we have ducklings. We have a mama duck and 10 baby ducks, and so we're going to work with the city to figure out where we can put those, and that was funded from a grant from the Roswell Wine Festival. So we've got some fun projects like that are kind of ongoing. Can we go next? Okay, just very quickly, just a little financial overview to give you a sense of where we are. We've already talked about we have a new membership program. We have a new corporate donation program that we're working on. For this partial fiscal year numbers, we've raised about $12,000, and that includes duck race fundraising and $2,600 in grants. And of that, we've spent about $10,700 on supplies, Adopt a Stream monitoring kits, supplies for our Rivers Alive cleanups, and other, some admin stuff in there as well. You want to go next? Okay, so this is a really fun slide because it kind of talks about the numbers that we've done over the past year. So you can see we have the bags of trash removed by how many volunteer groups, the Earth balloon, over 203 students, and then really amazing was our Rivers Alive this year in the fall, where we had more than 200 volunteers show up for the day, picking up trash all over the city, doing invasive species removal. And that was another great program where we worked together because KRB does a lot of the groundwork and the organization and the volunteers, and the city provided the funding for the dumpsters to take all of that trash away. And we had 2,000 pounds of trash. And I don't remember if some folks I think were at that. I don't remember. Yeah. So you saw that giant mound of trash that we had collected. So that was a very, very good day. And so in 2021, programs logged about 3,300 total volunteer hours. And if you calculate out the value, that's more than $100,000 value to the community. So we think that's pretty good. Okay, that's all we have here, just as, and again, a shout out to our board to thanks, and here's our contact information if you have additional questions. And one thing I did put in here is that 3,300 hours just counts volunteer time and events and things like that. That didn't even include the time that the board logs behind the scenes for going to meetings and serving on committees and making phone calls and doing all that stuff. So that was another 300 hours for another 10,000 in value. So we count that separately. So just wanted to shout that out too. So, but that's all we have.
All right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for the great service you provide. Any questions, comments from the mayor and council? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you for that presentation, and thank you all for being here. I have to admit, I didn't know who you were until this fall, but I had the best time at the River Alive. My son has participated in that for years through AJRA rowing, so he's done it and talked about it, and he's like, it's a lot of work, but it's better than working at home. So anyway, our team won, so I was particularly excited about that this past year.
Well
And
done.
we had a great time at Dotsy Garner, so it was awesome. I can't believe how much trash there was there, but glad it's not there.
always.
Hopefully it's not been replaced. Talk to me, I know we've just lost Nikki Belmonte as the part-time executive director. Talk to me about how, because we've been going through MOUs and going through our partner organizations, so I apologize, we didn't catch you in the sieve, but now you're in the spotlight. So tell me how that partnership works and how you all see that going forward, just so I understand, because I've been doing deep dives in a lot of our partner organizations, just to understand where the hiccups are and where we can improve, where we can support organizations like yours. And
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan, so.
That's fantastic. So I'll talk just a second, and then I'll let Brian jump in too, because he knows, excuse me, a little bit more about, because of some of the stuff that we don't necessarily see that's on the Roswell side of stuff. So from the KRB side, we've enjoyed a great relationship, and Nikki was a fantastic executive director. And so from our perspective, she was our admin help and staff. And so she helped us. I mean, we did a lot of I'm the secretary, so I do a lot of the minutia and the minutes and the things like that and whatever. But Nikki would help kind of keep us on track with what's coming up, with help calendar and help focus the board and get folks assigned and things. And then she did a lot of the programming that was kind of joint with the city, that is stuff that we as volunteer board members who have day jobs, we can't go out into schools and do earth balloon programs. So she was doing some of that stuff, which, felt like it was under the KRB umbrella, but was also supported by the city. So we've relied on that executive director to help us with the getting things on the calendar and getting things help and make sure that we know what, and then the board comes in with all of our enthusiasm and makes the thing happen. So Brian, do you want to chime in too?
Just to
Oh,
add,
yeah.
I'll leave that one, I'll take that one.
Okay, sorry.
That way we won't keep it back and forth.
hopefully this is,
Yeah, turn it on.
hopefully this is, can you hear me?
I don't think it's on.
Okay. So to break it down, Nikki, for Keep Roswell Beautiful, was serving really in two roles. One was the executive director, and the other was called program coordinator, if we could just sum that up. So Michelle did a good job of kind of explaining all that, but there's two roles that she was serving for Keep Roswell Beautiful. The other role is that she served as the environmental education coordinator for the city. There are some times where it's a little bit blurry as to what program or what element would fall under Keep Roswell Beautiful or would fall under the city, but that's how the roles would really break down.
Can I just add one thing real quick? And that's the format for Keep America Beautiful. For the affiliates, they have the executive director that's typically funded by the city, they have the board, and then they have the volunteers. And it takes all three of those to make a successful program.
All right, thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael, thank you. Michelle, thank you. All of you fine board members. KRB happens to be my favorite acronym in the city of Roswell. We love Keep Roswell Beautiful. We love the leadership that you guys, in terms of helping to keep our great, wonderful city litter-free, among other things, and all the great pieces that you do. But Nancy, I picked up on your extensive history in this business, and you have extensive experience with Keep America Beautiful and its affiliates. And as an executive director, I need you to educate me a little bit. So, kind of Brian touched on a little bit on how this historically has gone down in the city of Roswell, which, like you said, there's kind of three working models. Roswell's kind of got the hybrid model, which is fairly standard. But there's usually a return based upon that. I'm kind of curious, from your experience, what kind of return, when a city invests dollars, is the city looking for in a multiple? What kind of multiple are they looking for, and what kind of multiple has been the more recent experience with us?
I cannot answer what the most recent return is.
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
Well, actually, I know you know the answer. Sorry, I want to get some of her experience.
Yeah, and you know what? There was a time that I knew the answer to that question, and I wish I knew it right now. I wish I could pull it up real quick.
So if I were to suggest to you, because I would like us to find some answers, having been prepped by our fantastic Public Works Director and Public Works Assistant Director. So one of the challenges that we've got to figure out for our city is that historically a natural return is about $16 for every one that a city invests into a Keep America Beautiful affiliate program. It looks like that the return that the city's investing in dollars is about 1.8. In other words, it's dramatically less than what a city should expect on a return on investment in a KRB program, in a Keep America Beautiful affiliate program. And my assumption is that probably you historically would probably have that same kind of expectation when you were an executive director working for a city with a KRB, with a Keep America Beautiful program, that you were more accustomed to a greater investment.
Right.
So I'm wondering how we get that addressed in a way that's healthy for the dollars that we invest for residents going forward. Because right now we don't have a solution. I think we have a very healthy board. I think the KRB board right now is probably as strong as it's been in recent memory. I think there's a real energy about KRB in Roswell, which is awesome. You could see it with y'all. Obviously, recruiting somebody with your experience coming on board is probably, that speaks volumes. But we got to find a way to address the ongoing situation with the loss of the current executive director. And we got to figure that out in terms of investing the dollars of the residents, because it can't be $1.8. And that's where it is today. And that's not the kind of return that we can responsibly say to our fellow residents ongoing, particularly when sister programs are getting literally 8 and 10-fold return on the dollar. So I'm curious if there's any thoughts on that.
So I ran into a former councilman this weekend and was just asking him about it, because I said, what happened to Keep Roswell Beautiful after I left? And I essentially just got that it kind of fizzled. I don't know what happened. I don't know why that happened. I don't know if it was the executive directors that were selected to serve in that position. I think with Nikki came on right at COVID, so that was hard to have any volunteer hours to put towards that return. And I mean, I can only say what I can imagine would happen if we had the right person helping to lead us. I mean, I can see that, because if you look at the other Metro Atlanta programs, Keep Cobb Beautiful, I mean, all around us, they all have successful programs, and they all have an executive director and a board, and we just, something happened here. But I see it going in the other direction now. But I don't have any numbers to say.
Mayor,
Yes, sir, Mike.
go into a little bit more detail, if we have time, about the return on investment. You mentioned it was 1.8.
1.8, yes, sir.
And that means that you're spending $1.8 for every dollar you're getting back from KRB.
I will let the expert give us some detail on that. Sorry, Brian, to cut you off earlier. I knew you knew the answer.
That's quite all right. So just for 1.8 was an average over the last 10 years.
Over the last 10 years.
It was an average, but it's around that. I don't want it to be that exact. So last year, for example, was a little bit lower than that, and the year before was a little bit higher. So the average over the last 10 years has been 1.8. And then the question.
The question is, explain what that means.
So, and the average from the executive director from Keep Georgia Beautiful has said that the overall average from all Keep Blank Beautiful affiliates across the U.S. is 18 to 1, which means every dollar that the government entity or the municipal entity is putting into the program, that the city that is involved with that program is getting $18 in return. And the way that that's calculated is it's volunteer hours plus any donations or money that's raised minus any expenses. So that's the benefit back to the city.
Mike, that's a great, thank you, Brian. Mike, is that a plausible explanation?
Yes. I don't know what the expenses from the city would be. It seems like most of the expense, other than the cost of the executive director, which I'm sure is considerable, and the amount of time they spend with us. And we realize that maybe our organization's a little unique compared to some of the other nonprofits. We've been told that. So we're thankful for that. But we want to be able to pull our weight with the city of Roswell also. And that number, I believe, is beginning to come up and has been coming higher in the last couple of years versus the last 10 years. And I think Brian just alluded to that a little bit. But we would relish the continued partnership, maybe the amount of time, if we're understanding this correctly, what you, Mr. Mayor, and the council members are looking at is the amount of time that the executive director would spend with our organization and what that should be. We haven't been told that it was a discontinuance of the relationship, simply
Most certainly not. There is not even a suggestion of that. I think what there is requested is perhaps a greater clarity of the role. So if the city, underneath Sharon and Brian's leadership, they hire Ms. Belfontaine's replacement, which is a city in a city capacity, and I think, and Sharon, you cut me off. What they hope is that person doesn't become spending 80% of their time working as an executive director in KRB. And that's what looks like transpired in this last case. And therefore, that's why the return on the dollar actually went down last year, because the amount of time that she was having to spend working on KRB and not working on what she was getting paid to do by Sharon and Brian and Mr. Knighton was saying, hey, we're paying, but actually she's turning into an executive director for KRB. And so I think that's what our hope is, yes ma'am, to try to address that in some positive way.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. I agree, and I think it's very challenging and would be challenging to even have a city employee have the title of executive director. I work with a lot of nonprofits across all the country, all sizes, and I'm actually surprised that a city employee would have that role. And I understand that in some organizations you would devote time, 25% of the time, but also I would hope there'd be oversight and rules around that. And we chatted briefly, because if the city is, and I love you guys, I love everything you do. I'm just trying, I'm walking the line here of a city versus nonprofit. But if we have a 40-hour-a-week person and basically we say we're going to 10 hours a week is KRBB through education and through all the programs that the city's supposed to do we even have rules of, What happens if, can they save those 10 hours up? And I didn't do 10 hours, I didn't do 10 hours, I didn't do 10 hours. So in November and December, I'm gonna take off all of that time and give 100% of time to keep Roswell beautiful. I don't know, we just engaged in this conversation, so I'm not sure exactly what's historic, what's been set up, but you can quickly get down a rabbit hole. And you guys are kind of relying on this person who's really not supposed to be doing this job or giving this amount of hours. So the clarity, I think, is important on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I think
Sorry,
it would be,
sorry.
oh, sorry. Yes,
I didn't
sir.
mean to overstep the chairman's bounds there.
The mayor can always overstep.
I think that one of the things that will go a long way towards helping that is to clarify in the MOU. And I think some of and I would love to take a deep dive and really go through how the other affiliates do their accounting and do that here too, to see if I could get you better numbers. Because we keep track of volunteer time, and I'm terrible about logging my personal time that I know. So I would be curious to see if we really went in and looked at what the broad, if there was other things that we were failing to count. But I think having the MOU be a little more clarified, because I think there are some places where, depending on the day, Nikki could be doing a presentation for a bunch of school kids. That easily could be coded to the city, or it could be coded to Keep Roswell Beautiful, depending on, maybe what she's talking about, or did she use the earth balloon, or did she not? And those kinds of things, I think, are, like, if they get coded to Keep Roswell Beautiful, then that counts as part of her time. But if it's the same thing that she also does as part of her city employee, or her city duties, that's very confusing. Like, do we make that, which part of that? So some of the things are really hard to clarify, I think, for that. So I think that might be something that would be helpful as we decide that, because I would want, whatever relationship we have to be, like, we want to make sure that the city gets the things that they need for their outreach program, and their, to make sure that they can send that, to do the requirements that they're supposed to be doing. And then also, we can have the support here. So, we would welcome that kind of clarification, I think.
Well, I think, Michelle, you bring up, this is not short term. It's been well over a decade, and I think there's a lot of pieces to it. I would say, and obviously making an MOU is, making a simple MOU clear, an excellent suggestion. I would tell you, just as an idea, just as a throw out, it would, I think, for example, I think Nikki's worked on some Saturdays where she's run some booths, and probably my thinking is that would be within the bounds of the volunteer organization, the KRB, that they would be manning the booth, not a paid employee of the city. And there was, I think, an instance where she was actually manning the booth by herself because there was nobody else to man the booth. And so I would have an expectation that that's the power of the organization. That's why you have the volunteer organization.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And I think so. Her role would be to help, I think, along some management, organizational pieces, limited to that, but from a standpoint of the things that you're really going to be, that you're good at, right? Which is the energy, the passion, recruiting, fundraising, actually doing. I wouldn't see the city employee, if you'll forgive me, being that involved in any of those efforts. And I think that has, it's my perspective, that that's occurred. And I think that's something that the city really would like to say, can we get that clarified? Because the success of KRB is based upon you, not the city. The city, this KRB will not be successful if it's based upon us. It just can't not be dependent on, it's got to be based upon your energy, your passion, your recruitment, your fundraising, and you know that. And I think that those lines have gotten blurred a little bit over the years. Sharon, do you want to address this at all?
Yes, Mayor, you're absolutely right. And I think that the difficulty that we have had is it is difficult to find someone with executive director type traits and an environmental education coordinator. Nikki actually was an interesting, she would call her a zebra, if you will. She was really excellent at both. It's the reason we bring this to you now, because we need to fill this role so that we have an environmental education coordinator that's ready to go into the schools in the fall to fulfill some of our obligations there that really our permits call for it. So this is a very timely conversation. And in our experience, some of the difficulty was in creating some boundaries around the time spent of one role versus the other. And it's why we're suggesting or would like consideration or clarity from council as to what role the city wants to have in the partnership. Because there are some things that are quite logical for the city to be doing. You mentioned, obviously, the dumpsters and having those available, doing the kinds of site coordination that we have to do when we have volunteers in our parks and on city property. There are folks from Rec and Parks that are doing work there. There are solid waste people who are doing things there. There are expenses to the disposal. A lot of those things don't even figure into the numbers that Brian was considering when he was looking simply at the feedback that we were getting from the two individuals that were in that role most recently, Nikki, and then her predecessor, believe it or not, was Vicky. And both of those ladies, frankly, as a manager to them, were frankly overwhelmed and overrun and felt that they weren't meeting the needs and expectations of their role here in the city. And so it's important for us to talk about what's an appropriate role for the city, and to make sure that we're being the partner we want to be to this fabulous organization that has a rich history, as Nancy shared with you, and is really important to our mission in environmental public works. They're what we're all about from the volunteer point of view.
Brian, the analysis of the numbers, is there any, to Michelle's point, is there any evaluation that might be worth consideration of any redundancy that might be taken into account, or looking at sister organizations? That's, Karen, why I started really with you, because I really want to know, because you've done this before at other places. Did you do it strictly as an executive director, or did you do it as an employee of a government entity as well?
No, I used to say that by virtue of being the environmental coordinator, I was the director of Keep Roswell Beautiful. My first allegiance was to the city, and then I assisted the board.
So I should have asked the question better in the beginning. How much time were you spending on KRB, and how much time you were spending on the city when you first started?
Probably, 25% was KRB,
25.
but the rest of it was environmental education, environmental programs that incorporated the volunteers from Keep Roswell Beautiful, but it wasn't their project.
And so you kind of wisely kind of touched on this earlier when you said somehow that got out of alignment over the years. And you kind of were asking, I guess, a city councilman from the past, like, what happened? What happened to us? And you probably didn't get a great answer on that, I'm guessing. And I don't think anybody in this room probably has that answer. I don't think anybody does. But I think that's the request. Is it possible to solve that? Is it possible to bring that back into alignment, that if we have a city person who's acting as the executive director, is that right, Sharon? 24, spending.
Well, that's where we are now.
Okay.
If we continue with that.
And your preference is that they not act as an executive director based upon recent history, or do you have a?
I think it's been challenging for that person to put a fence line around those hours. And we've tried to help. I think there are a number of things that the city's going to do by default, and that there's a contribution that makes sense as far as what our role is. Supporting the volunteers. I think, Brian, you probably had a couple ideas of how that might look, and Brian's probably got a little better idea. Who's that?
So what Nancy said is it's kind of important to go back. So if you were saying 25%, I actually didn't know that. So if she was spending 25% with KRB and 75% with the city, that was kind of what the ideal goal was for Nikki that was laid out by Sharon and Dan when Nikki actually started. When I asked her several times, and then even when she was leaving, kind of what was that percentage, it was 50% or greater for KRB. And in finding out and kind of looking through the numbers, it appears that the past city employee has been spending greater than 50% of the time until you get back to about 2015, that may have been 2014, 2015 when it maybe kind of switched. The problem, I think, before this current board is that previous boards were not as strong. One of the greatest things that Nikki did was to build up this board. This is definitely the strongest board that they've ever had. The things that they're doing now are fantastic. There's a lot that they can be doing. There's definitely a lot they can be doing. I think where our challenge is if we're looking at 25% or even 50% of a person's time from the city, how do we best do that? And if we want to increase the benefits that the organization is bringing to the city, then you focus on the volunteers and you focus on the volunteer hours. That's where you get the biggest benefit. If you put more of a city person's time, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to bring up that benefit to cost ratio. And it's also, it's kind of disempowering some of the board, because I think previous boards, not this one, previous boards have been relying on that city person to basically do everything. And this, kudos to this board. I'm very impressed by them. I've only been, wearing my Nikki hat for about a month and a half, 2 months, and it's incredible what they're doing.
Mike and Nancy, do you hear that when Brian says that? Does that resonate with y'all?
Yes, that really goes back to what I was saying about the numbers. Going back 10 years ago, I've only been on board for 4 years, since 18, and only board chair in the last year. But I agree with Brian's comments. The composition of our board now, and the fundraising and the activities and the contributions and the volunteers from our community and the citizens are dramatically higher than they were under Vicki Culver. That's who I came in under. Not that Vicki did a poor job. She did a great job. She was very diligent and very prudent, a good steward, I think, of Roswell's time. But Nikki was a little bit more organizational. And if you gave it to her, you knew it was going to get done. And she's built this board up. So what I'm saying is that I think the numbers going forward are going to be a lot greater than the numbers that you're looking at now on the cost benefit. And as a business person, let me say that I'm impressed that our city leaders here are thinking about the stewardship of our tax dollars with each of our citizens in Roswell, and where those are being allocated, and whether that is a cost benefit or is it being unfair to other nonprofit organizations, the relationship we have with the executive director. That's called due diligence in my business, and I appreciate that. So I hope that answered a little bit of your question.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, sir, very much. Michelle, I'm sorry, I said Nancy, but I meant to say Michelle, and I apologize. So when Brian was saying that, did any of that resonate with you?
I think so, sir. I think it would be helpful, like I said earlier, to kind of clarify which, if we pulled some of the KRB, thank you, sorry. For example, Rivers Alive is a fantastic event in the fall. And all of our board was there. Every board member was a leader at a different site all around the city. But Nikki was the one who kind of, she set up the spreadsheet. Moving forward, yeah, there's probably some of those things that we could do, but as it's the first time many of us have been through it, she kind of helped lay that groundwork. But that function, that Rivers Alive function, is also very city, the city is very involved in that as well. So I think the one concern that we had is, if we were to try to separate, if we were trying to separate into, okay, this is a city program and this is a KRB program, I'm not sure how you would do that for some of these, because we are kind of intertwined with that. So I think that would be the thing that I would want to figure out as we move forward with the relationship is, time is good, but maybe it's about events. Maybe it's not so much 10 hours a week. Maybe it's the city will partner with KRB on this event and this event and this event, and we'll do this part and you do this part. But maybe it's not so much like counting hours. Maybe it's about, let's make sure that this event is very successful. The board and our coordination could work on these events. And I mean, some of them are still going to be connected for sure, but maybe that might be another way to look at it, because I think the folks are always going to fall into the trap, like you were saying. Like, if we have a huge event that's going to take you 20 hours to work on, do you have to save up hours for the whole rest of the time? And and I will say, since I've been here, this board has been the ones active on Saturdays. We're the ones who have been at the tables at Rivers Alive, at Alive After 5, and we've been the ones who are doing all that. So the only time I saw Nikki on a Saturday was when she was doing the recycling table and I was doing the KRB table. So, there's that kind of joint connection there as well. So just as a... Yeah.
So Nancy, you've got a lot of experience, real world experience in all this. Like, how would you address this?
I would say that the environmental coordinator needs to hold the volunteers accountable. And I would not have gone out by myself to work at a table without any volunteers. That's not what that position should do. And I hate to hear that she felt like she needed to do that. And then, maybe she did spend more time than she really needed to. Because the board's not representing.
To your point, so I think that the city, and everyone in this room knows this, historically always tries to bend over to make sure that it's meeting its obligation and beyond to its residents and to its regardless. And there's the old proverb that sometimes when you try to be, and I'm going to butcher it, but sometimes when you try to be nice, you end up doing the wrong, you end up being cruel, and you end up messing it up. And I think you say it very well, is that I think this city and the staff, and look, bend over backwards trying to make sure everybody's happy. And I think sometimes it bites you in the, what. And you kind of heard Sharon say at the very beginning, when we sat down, when Dan sat down and Brian sat down in the beginning, they said, here's Vicki, hey, $25.75. And I think they're big. I mean, some of the figures, it was well beyond 50. It was well beyond 50 of what Nikki was spending with KRB. And so they're obviously frustrated, like, well, we're paying her to do this, but she's actually, we feel like she's running the KRB organization. And so I think you said it well. It's like, what role do you want the city person to fill for you? What do you need them to do? Let's describe that, and let's fulfill that. And then what does, how the city can help support you in being as successful as the great things that you do for this city. But the kind of, if, this, I don't want this, to germinate and then be back, the same kind of conversation. And it sounds like you have a really super healthy sense about this. Like, you really have a very strong construct about it and how it should occur based upon your experience. And I don't know how my colleagues feel about it, but yes, sir.
Yes, I would say, Mr. Mayor, in listening to you speak, that the way that we could make it more comfortable for the city would be a new MOU with some details about the time that's being spent between the city employee, which is being paid by the city, and our nonprofit org. But I look at it like a business. Say, for example, that position paid $100,000 a year, and let's say that 25% of that time went toward us. That's $25,000, and we provided $100,000 worth of volunteer hours. So there you're at 4 to 1. We're not up to the 8 that you talked about.
18.
We're going to 16.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, we're not there. But if we could increase the top line to $200,000 worth of volunteer hours, now you're moving toward the goal that you're trying to get to. And that's 8 to 1 then. You see what I'm saying?
18. 18.
He's not there yet. He's getting
I know.
I can see the city of Roswell is going to be taken to new heights here. I like the way you think, pretty big, that's big. But we would like to double right now from that 100,000 to 200,000, and then keep moving, yes.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. And I think actually there's a couple of different conversations because we're talking about the resources, the person and the resources and what they're going to do. And then on the flip side is how are you going to increase the volunteer hours? How are you going to increase the funding? How are you going to increase all of that? And that's the role of a board and an executive director that is not an environmental coordinator that is just there to, or, that's basically there to do programs and to support programs and to be there to support those programs that overlap with what Michelle's been talking about, the ones that are hard to separate. My question is, do you guys file 990s, or are you making generating more than 50,000 a year?
Not yet.
So you're filing the postcards, that 990 postcards, and even with your service hours, in-kind service, you don't get over the 50,000.
You know what? That's a very good question that I do not know the answer to yet.
Okay.
So,
Yes, we haven't had a way to measure that yet. We're tackling that right now. We have plans, lots of plans on raising a lot more volunteers and a lot more hours.
So I guess my point is, an executive director that is not a city employee is going to help drive that. Somebody in your organization is going to help drive a lot of that. I mean, you can't be in an ED role and be an eighth of a person, because you've got a quarter of a person that's doing education, and then part of that, then take half of that job, or have a quarter to an eighth person doing an ED job, and have an organization thrive and grow and do more programming and expand and do all the things. That's just my perspective on it, my take. And I don't know if you're having trouble recruiting people, but there's so many folks that are so passionate about everything that you do. I would think that somebody'd be just,
suggesting like a volunteer executive director?
yes, a volunteer executive director.
Yes, we haven't thought about that until you just brought it up. We've been relying on the city of Roswell for that. But I will say that Nikki and her role, she was an extremely organized person, very disciplined and very cost efficient, I thought, handling not only the city of Roswell's duties, but being a force with our board and raising her own family. However, she was very careful to let us know what her duties were with the city and what lines she could cross and she could not cross. And so we honored that, and we didn't ask her to do some of the things that the board should do, because it would have gone against maybe some of the duties she had in the MOU. And so I want you to be aware of that.
All right, thank you. Any further, this is a discussion item. Any further questions, comments from mayor and council at this time? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you for that insight. Is that something posed as far as a possible volunteer executive director, or even a that you all could hash out? And then I'm thinking maybe from the city, look carefully at what might fall under whose hat, as far as responsibilities to consider.
I think that we would have to take that back and discuss that with the board. My experience with nonprofits, volunteer executive director is kind of a unicorn, I think. So I'm not sure that that's a possibility right now. I mean, that might be something
I'll follow up there. I do know some of our partner organizations, like we contribute toward administration. So we don't necessarily pay for an X or a Y or an ED or Z or whatever. And it doesn't sound like you have cash on hand for that at the moment, but if that was a goal, and that would be something for you all, I would say, to discuss and see if that's something you could push through. And no, you're not like anybody else, and most of our partner organizations are not like, I mean, everybody's got their uniqueness, and that's what makes Roswell so interesting. That what speaks to somebody about you might not on another, but they're plugged in somewhere else, so it's great. But I'm just thinking about some goal setting there. I personally don't want to, we're not letting you go, you know. So, but I'd like to find a balance there so that the city feels good about managing, you know, our staff. You feel good about being led or partnered. We all win in the partnership department. But you're right, there's a lot of gray in there that could be city, could be KRB, shared equipment or time. And I think that probably needs a look, some delineation.
To Ms. Hall's observation, I was just taking the salary and you pay that position. I realized what you were saying. You were saying that there are city employees that have to put the dumpsters out there to pick up all that trash we pull out of the river and coordinate the opening of the park and allow us to be at the park during these various events. We did rely on Nikki to do that. She was the logistics person. We wouldn't know who to call or what to, you know, to get to the right person through government to do that. And she was a government employee that could get right to the heart of the matter and get it done. So she was very instrumental in that. But we realized that did cost the city something to do that.
Councilmember Hall, I believe, had a comment. Yes.
And what I'm thinking about the future. And Roswell, I think Roswell Arts Fund went through this where, you know, initially you have volunteer EDs. And then at some point when you can start raising the funds, you start paying them a token amount. And the reason you even want to do that is because to be eligible for grants, you have to have shown a history of paying somebody a salary for 2 years. Some of them are 2 years, some are 3 years. And I'm talking, you know, maybe $20,000, something like that. It's not a huge amount, but at that point you start becoming eligible for grants, and until that point, I think you're going to be struggling in this area. So we have to look at the future, and I think the future is having an executive director that is devoted, that is a volunteer, that's devoted. Maybe it's a rotating role for 12 months, kind of an unknown thing, so it's not too much burden. But if this person was doing it in a quarter or an eighth of her time, I think that if you had a dedicated person on your board doing the ED for just, you know, a few more hours, I think you'd get a bigger return and make a lot of progress towards that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, I just, first of all, want to thank you for everything you do. I've gone to cleanups that you guys have done, the duck race is fun as can be, and what you do here is one of the most important functions in Roswell, because if we don't keep Roswell beautiful, it's not Roswell. So I really appreciate all that you do. I just have a question for clarification. Where does Public Works stand at this point on ability and avenues for continued support as we transition to an executive director? And I know that's the direction that you guys will be headed. It is absolutely one of Councilman Hall's expert areas, and I know she's steering you in the correct direction, but I think I'd like to understand just where you guys sit right now as far as we rework the MOU. I'll let you answer that.
So our thought is that we can continue to provide program coordination in conjunction with Keep Roswell Beautiful. The thought of running the organization versus supporting the programs and supporting what they're trying to get done And obviously having a liaison point person for Keep Roswell Beautiful to work with, this would be something that would transition over time. Indeed, we want their programs to be well supportive, vital. We want those dumpsters there. We'll make sure that things get disposed of properly. So supporting the programs is what we think would make the most sense. And I think, Michelle, you were basically kind of headed that way with the idea of really thinking about what are we doing, what are you doing, what makes sense for us to do, what makes sense for you to do. And by reducing that heavy lift of having a city staff person dedicated to Keep Roswell Beautiful, you reduce what the city's putting into it. So very quickly you see the return coming from this partnership kind of start to flip the other direction, which is I think what you're seeking is for that return to start improving in the relationship. So I think there's lots we can do to continue the partnership and to support all the good work that's happening out there. The question is, does it make sense for a city staff person to stay in that executive director role? And can this group be successful without a city staff person working as an executive director? And I think that's probably the question in front of us, and I'm not sure you all are ready to answer that question.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the discussion. Obviously, I think it portends for additional discussions down the road. And as always, we very much appreciate all that you do for the city and the partnership which has existed over the years. So I'm sure we'll have further discussions and look forward to engaging you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody on KRB. Thank you.
All right. Under Public Safety Fire, we do not have any action items. Under Public Safety Police, we have the item number 3 on the agenda, consideration of a revised records fee schedule, including fees for a new resolution. Chief Conroy. Much better. If you bear with me, I'm going to pull up a slide on the projector for us. As Chief Conroy prepares his presentation, certainly appreciate again, Mayor and Council, and your detailed input into the budget. This budget was transformational, which resulted in a best-in-class police pay plan for police, and also under public safety and fire, set the stage for a transition to a full-time fire department over the next several years. So thank you again to the Mayor and Council for your leadership and guidance in developing what will be a transformational budget for the city of Roswell. What am I doing? Okay. So this first item is a fee-setting resolution. As you know, we recently passed a massage ordinance in the city, and in order to start issuing permits, we need to establish a fee for those permits. While we are doing this item, we would also like to review and consider some changes in our current fee schedule. I'll go over what our current fees are for the permits that the police department issues and the proposed changes. Some will remain the same, and some are increases that would be consistent with our neighboring cities. Accident and incident reports will remain the same. That is set by state law at $5. Incident reports, we have available online, most of our incident reports that are free, no charge to our residents, and the ones that there is a charge require redaction and would fall under the Open Records Act, so there would be no change. Alcohol permit, we're recommending 2 changes. One is to increase from $25 to $50, and then to lessen the time that the permit is valid from 2 years to 1 year. This is consistent with most of our neighbors. There's some that's slightly higher. One of the reasons for this increase is when we run these permits, it costs us $27.50 to the state of Georgia to process those fingerprints and run to get that criminal background. So we're trying to recoup some of those fees. Right now, we're doing that at a loss.
Criminal backgrounds, we're also asking an increase from $15 to $20. Dash cam videos, E911 CAD reports are based on Open Records Act. Fingerprints rolled, we're asking for an increase from $10 to $20. This is due to, with COVID, we have to take more safety precautions, rubber gloves and masks as we are fingerprinting these individuals. The solicitor door-to-door permits, we're asking an increase from $25 to $50. And those are both valid for 6 months. There's no change in that. The massage permit, we're asking to establish that at $50, and that's a 1 year valid for that permit. And that concludes the changes and proposals for permit fees.
All right, thank you, Chief. Questions, comments? Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Just a question on the massage permit. So this is the fee. Are there requirements for the massage permit, or how does that work if somebody comes in for a massage permit?
Yeah, there's requirements as far as criminal background and what your history has to look like for that to be approved.
And you have to be licensed? All
Correct.
that
This is for any employee within one of these establishments that is not licensed by the state of Georgia.
Okay, so if you're not licensed by the state of Georgia,
This is for all other employees, so that's massage, managers, supervisors, the clerks at the front are all required to have a permit to work in that establishment.
and if they have a license, they don't have to have a permit?
Through the state, yes, if they're licensed through the state, they're not required to have a
They
permit.
just need to display that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hills?
Yes, follow up on that. What does that, just for our viewers, what does that help us accomplish?
So this helps us accomplish several things as we talked as we were working on the massage ordinance. Human trafficking is a big deal within these massage establishments, as well as it allows us to track the individuals that are working there. So if we issue violations to these individuals, one, we know who they are. They must be U.S. citizens or have a valid green card to be in the United States. And we check their criminal background. So if they have a history of anything that is sexual related, then that would deny them the permit to work.
Yes, any further comments? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
I'm probably a little dense on this one, Chief. When we put this together, I had the discernible understanding of the permit, and I thought what we were going to do with the permit. But I got a little confused a minute ago when you mentioned something to Christine. So we know the businesses where we have a challenge in the city, and
Correct.
part of this is to help us rectify that challenge.
Correct.
So in the majority of those businesses, there is not a licensed massage therapist from the state. Is that a correct statement or an incorrect statement?
The majority of
The
the
businesses that we are.
problematic
that are
businesses?
Problematic businesses, there are not licensed massage therapists from the state in those businesses today.
I don't believe there are.
I don't either.
Right.
But I don't want to be too speculative. That's why I'm
Correct.
asking. You would know better than I. So a massage permit, so I'm going in there and in these businesses that are problematic, where there may be an individual giving a massage, and they don't have a license, they don't have a state license to do so. Are we issuing a massage permit to this individual?
Correct.
And that massage permit says what? What are we saying by doing that?
So I'm going to have to defer to Mr. Petty, who was instrumental in writing the original massage ordinance.
Right, so, I mean, what the ordinance says is that anybody who's employed by a spa or massage therapist who's not a licensed massage therapist under the law, under state law, has to get this employee permit, this employee work permit, is what it is.
Is this true, Mr. Petty, is this for all massage businesses in the city?
Yes.
So if I'm a receptionist I'm going to use what we all know to be a very reputable massage business, national chain. This is not one of the problems. Massage Envy, for example. National chain, totally legit, all licensed massage therapist. There's a manager in that business. There's probably a receptionist in that business. So they have to get permits?
Yes.
So, and they're not the target of our, they are not, that's a perfect example of a business that's not going to be impacted, and nor are the police going to be going to that business, because we don't have challenges with that business. They're not dens of human trafficking or prostitution. It's a perfect example. So I'm trying to get clear on making sure that we do the right thing with our permitting here. Because if I'm going into a business where I know I have a problem, where I've got prostitution and I've got human trafficking, you know, I'm trying to find a legal way to make sure I can shut that business down. So the permit, I go in there tomorrow and I say, all right, you all are for some reason doing massage, but you don't have a license from the state to do massage. That's a problem, number one, in and of itself, correct? But it's not anything that we have jurisdiction over. Yes or no? I'm sorry. I apologize. Do we have jurisdiction? If someone's doing massage in a business, but they do not have a license from the state to do massage, what jurisdiction do we have over that?
So there's certain things that they would be able to do that employees who don't have to be a licensed massage therapist can do. And I'd have to go look at the state law exactly to do that. So they may not be breaking any laws, but they can't hold themselves out there as a licensed massage therapist. But they can do foot. I mean, there's a bunch of things that they can do, and I can go look at the state law for you on that. But I think maybe the chief can speak to this more. What part of the issue is that, you know, when they go out there, they're saying, oh, they're not doing that. They're a receptionist or they're cleaning.
Correct.
And that way we're keeping track of everybody who's there. So there's not that sort of shuffling around and sort of hiding the ball from the police.
Correct. Without a massive undercover operation, we can't confirm what is exactly going on inside the establishment if that person is permitted or not permitted. Therefore, every employee must be permitted or licensed through the state that works in there.
So I'm not, this is not rhetorical by any stretch. I'm curious if there's a better terminology for what we're seeking here. Because what I don't want in this whole issue is for somehow, like, we are going after illegal activity in specific businesses, right? And I don't want the legitimate businesses to be harmed by the fact, like, massage is a legitimate word and a legitimate practice and licensed by the state of Georgia. So I'm wondering if there's another terminology that we should be using for our intentions here of shutting down these businesses. I'm asking. Because it sounds problematic to use a massage permit unless this is just purely for data collection.
This is to track who's working in the establishments and what their criminal histories are that are working in there. So I'll use some examples. You may have what is viewed as a perfectly legitimate operation, and they have one employee who is rogue. As we've said, in here, there are good employees who are there to work and do an honest day's work. They might be in what you would term a legitimate establishment performing illegal activities, and we have to be able to track who those individuals are.
And I think the ordinance actually refers to it as an employee work permit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
I have a question. I'm a dentist. I have a dental practice, and we have a state board that regulates if you're a dentist who's not practicing as a licensed dentist. Does that not exist in?
It does. So there are licensed massage therapists under state law, and so to put out your license to do that, that's why we can't regulate them, because they're regulated by the state.
So what we're doing is we're coming to my office. Let's take dentistry for example. We're coming to my office and we're saying, Dr. Vanstrom, now you're going to be charged an office dental permit for $50 by the city. Am I right so far? And it's to verify that everyone working in your practice is legitimate?
No, because you would be licensed by the state in this situation, so you wouldn't have to get one. But if you had employees that were not licensed by the state, then those employees would individually have to get those licenses.
And you're performing the functions that are outlined in the ordinance.
Right.
It's not about dentistry.
It's a little
I
bit,
think that's important, Chief. Come back to that, because that's where you were helping me understand this a little better. There's some defined terms in there that this,
Correct, and I did not bring the ordinance with me today because I didn't know we were going to discuss the
We
ordinance.
we didn't either.
Correct.
All right. It seems that there need to be some additional information provided to mayor and council. Yes, Councilmember Hall?
So I think what's tripping us up is this permit, the word permit. And what was it, Chief, that you had mentioned that's the ordinance, or what's the language in the ordinance?
I think the language in the ordinance is employee work permit.
Employee work permit. So all of these entities are required an employee work permit, and the only people that don't require one are the ones that have a state license. Is that right?
The employees who have a state license don't have to get, so this is not for the business, this is for the employees, actually.
Every employee.
This is very much like the pouring permits for people who work at a restaurant, for example. You have to get them, if they're gonna serve alcohol, they have to go, they get the pouring permit. This is very similar to that.
It's written exactly like the pouring permit.
It is.
And the handling permit
It's
for alcohol.
similar, but there's a little problem in the sense that, and Chief, you're the expert. But there are a majority of legitimate massage therapists in the city of Roswell. I don't know if the number's 10, 11, 12, 13 of businesses that we're gonna shut down, right? And is there an outlier in any of those legitimate businesses? I would not suppose to say so, but those aren't people that are victims of human trafficking. They may be guilty, and we need to correct it. They may be guilty of prostitution, but that's not the intent of what we're after. We're after shutting down the ongoing illegal prostitution and human trafficking that we know is taking place as a regular function of a business being set up. And to your point, I didn't think we were going though, and I would say, I assume that when I go to a legitimate massage therapist, that all the massage therapists are licensed by the state, and that state license means something to them, and they're not going to dilly-dally with that, and that they are licensed professionals. So I'm not thinking we're going after them with this.
Right, and I think you're actually going down the correct road. You're also assuming that these employees at this establishment have been vetted and their criminal histories have been checked to verify they don't have a history of prostitution.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Correct.
Yeah, based upon,
And that's what this permit establishes.
no legitimate massage therapist or therapist business wants anything to do with
Correct.
this area that we are going to shut down. But just for our information, and this is what I'd say it's different than the pouring license, is that the receptionist or the general manager or assistant manager in an organization, and there's not a lot of them, they're gonna have to get a permit as well.
Correct.
Because if they don't have if they're not a massage therapist.
Correct.
So, kind of like your analogy, yes, the people that are not licensed by the state would get a permit.
Yes, Councilmember Hills?
I had some dental work done a few years ago, and I wish that I could have pulled permits on the helpers in the office. It wasn't your practice, by the way. But I wish,
please clarify that again.
after I went to the
wasn't my
Fulton
office.
County Bar and the Cherokee County Bar Association over that. So, I wonder would it sound better to use the word registration than permit? Is that are you worried about semantics, or that we're pinning down our good establishments? Because I'm concerned that we're giving a pass.
Yeah,
And these rascals know what's up.
I think the term massage is really problematic because massage is a legitimate term.
Right.
And it's a legitimate practice. It's licensed by the state. I don't know what the right term is, Chief and Mr. Petty, I don't. but it seems problematic, and it seems like it could be confusing to the public, and it seems like it might put shade on people who are doing the right thing. Something is not setting perfectly with me on this, and I can't put my finger on it.
What is the category or the, that falls under? But it's not a convenience store, it's not a doctor's office, it's not a grocery store.
I'd have to refer to the ordinance where it's delineated in the ordinance.
Well, and I'm sorry, I don't have the ordinance in front of me either, but there's definitions in the ordinance of what a massage establishment is, what a spa is. The whole thing has a bunch of definitions in it, so it defines that.
Let me open Pandora's box a little bit here. So if I go to, say, and I'm giving free publicity to legitimate organizations, but they deserve it. If I go to Spa Sidel, right, where I have, what do you call them, the people that do your nails, the manicurist, and the ones that do, and there's hairstylists there, and there's a sundry of professional people there. Under this, they all have to get a permit because there's a massage therapist in the business, correct? If there's one or two massage therapists in that building,
If it meets the definition of massage therapy, a massage spa or massage therapist location as defined by the ordinance, then yes.
And they're not properly licensed.
And they're not,
Correct.
they're
They're
not
not
licensed through the state.
Correct.
but like a manicurist is not going to be licensed by the state as a massage therapist.
No, but they're licensed through the state for manicures.
So that would be, if you have a state license, does that necessarily mean I don't have to have a massage permit?
Yeah, if you're not performing this function, you're not employed in there. If you are licensed by the state, you're exempt from this ordinance. Is the definition that's in the ordinance
Licensed by the state in any profession?
for the professions that are listed.
That are
And
listed.
again, that's in the definitions of the original ordinance.
Yes, Councilmember
And-
Vanstrom.
And I think Lee and the chief would be the ones, you've done so much work on this. Isn't this aren't they calling themselves massage parlors?
Spas or massage parlors is the
I'm just trying to help with the name. here
part of
and
the
there.
parlance that's used, correct?
So the massage and spa and,
This article have illegal massage spas.
put massage and spa in both in an article. Okay.
All right, thank you. Any further questions, comments from mayor and council? This is an item that would need a formal approval, obviously at a city council meeting.
I have a clarifying question.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. So, Chief, does this need to be in place so that you can start doing your job?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So, do we have an opportunity to work on semantics later if we pass this today?
So, and from my view on this, and I'll let Michael, this is setting the fee for the permits. Everything else we've discussed today is ancillary to this topic.
Yeah, and what I would say is, you've already passed the ordinance. The ordinance is on the books right now with the language as is. So this is not changing any language. This is just setting that fee. If we want to talk about changing the language or the semantics on it, we're gonna have to go back and revise our already adopted ordinance.
Okay, so this is just fee setting.
This is just a
Correct.
fee
Okay,
setting.
thank
That's
you
all
for
this
that
is.
clarification.
So I'll make that simple. I'll make it easy for everybody. I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we find the correct language. I make a motion to move forward on these set of permits.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember,
I do have a caveat.
yes.
There's not a caveat to the vote. I have a request. That we go back and look at potential amending of the ordinance with relation to the semantics of the language. That's my request. But I'm moving forward, my resolution, my motion is to pass this.
All right, motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Discussion by Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, and I would just like to applaud the discussion. I know it seemed like we were going kind of sideways, but it's very important to me that these small business owners who are legitimate and functioning in the city are 100% aware This is not impacting them
Correct.
at all. And I think that's what's so important here, so thanks for the discussion.
Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. I mentioned this in a previous work session, but, and maybe even a council meeting when the ordinance was passed, but I've talked to quite a few massage and, what am I trying to say, businesses here in Roswell, and they're in full support of going after the illegitimate businesses here. Two of them said, "Oh my gosh, that's great." Now, in fairness, I did not discuss the fee. I did discuss a permit because I wasn't there yet, but that's been over a month. So, but I have talked, not all, but I have talked to quite a few, and they were pleased that I gave them a heads up.
If I could just speak to part of our intent, once this is passed and approved by the city council, the intent of our office is to have our special investigative section go out and deliver the ordinance to the businesses and explain, you have this many days, we have to do what's reasonable to allow them to get permits for these employees before we can start enforcing it, because it would not be reasonable for me to say, hey, tomorrow we're gonna start enforcing this, not giving them opportunity for their employees to get their
Can we show up and fast track that and have personnel from the city, Randy, ready to go and say, let's get your permitting done here on site?
We have to do fingerprinting.
Well,
It's
this,
gotta be in our
what do we gotta
office.
do to fast track it? Because it's, like you said, this is,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. We had the motion from Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of moving this item forward? All right, thank you so much. And the next item, under Public Safety Police, item number 4, consideration of the amending of 3 city ordinances pertaining to permits required to be obtained at the Roswell Police Department.
So it's almost as if I did this on purpose from our discussion. So as we were setting the fee schedules for these permits and the changes that we talked about, we found a couple locations in the current ordinance that's not consistent with our practice. Our practice is typically anything that talks about the permit says this will be set by the mayor and city council. So we found a couple ordinances where we would like to change that. These are ordinances, require 2 readings, and have to go through a much longer process. So in the future, if you ever want to change any of those fee schedules that we talked about, you can do it through resolution, only has to be read at 1 meeting. So the ordinance that we came across during Chapter 3, Article 3.6, Section 3.63C, and this is what we just talked about, the permit will be valid for a period of 2 years to 1 year. So we're asking to change that. Which was in our prior item that we discussed. In section 3.6.4, we're asking that this be changed from 10 to 5 years for crimes involving moral turpitude in their criminal history. That's consistent with all of our neighbors, and what most everybody uses is 5 years instead of 10 years for crimes of moral turpitude. And then this is the one that'll really spell out what we just talked about. Chapter 10, under licenses, taxes, and business regulations, Article 10.9, Section 10.9.9, the fee for the door-to-door solicitor permits shall be $25. We're asking to change that to set by mayor and city council, which is consistent with all of our other city ordinances. That allows you to change the fees through a fee-setting resolution without having to amend the ordinances.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Chief, on section 363C, last sentence,
Yes.
persons applying for the permit shall make themselves available for photographing, fingerprinting, and such other investigation as may be required by the police department.
Correct.
If it goes from 2 to 1, does that mean, it means they may, but does it mean they have to? Are they gonna be required to get photographed, fingerprinted, and investigated every year?
Correct. And what that investigation is we review the criminal history. It actually comes to my office. I have to review each criminal history and certify yes or no. When we go, this is under the alcohol handling. So when we go before the Alcohol Beverage License Board next door, I go and I speak and I say, yes, they are certified. I cannot give the details of their criminal history. I'm not permitted to release what's in there. I have to certify that yes or no, they meet those requirements that are listed in the law. That's the extent of the investigation. We run their criminal history, photograph them, and give them a new permit for every year.
So you enjoy the photographing and fingerprinting every year?
I don't do it, but it is required because we could issue a permit today, tomorrow you get arrested for some sort of sexual assault or alcohol violation that prohibits you from being certified, and we wouldn't catch it for 2 years. So this was consistent with all of our neighboring jurisdictions.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
I'll just add to that. So my husband and I were in a very long adoption process that lasted about 6 years. And so we were fingerprinted once a year. And so my question was, my fingerprints didn't change from the last time or the last 3 times we did this. Why do we have to do this? And it's for these reasons. So
Right,
I
and we have
understand.
to verify that it's you and you didn't say, hey, I got arrested. I'm gonna have Councilmember Hills come stand in my place and we'll run her criminal history.
We have a lot of fingerprints.
All right. Any more discussion or questions or comments from Mayor? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Chief, forgive my ignorance. This is missing out of my book. So do you mind scrolling up just a little bit? What is turpitude? I apologize. I don't know what that is.
That's something that Mike Palermo is guilty of a lot.
A phrase that describes wicked, deviant behavior constituting an immoral, unethical, or unjust departure from ordinary social standards.
All right.
I had to look it up
It's
myself.
I'm using that.
Crimes of moral turpitude is a legal term that we use to describe certain crimes.
Okay.
It has a specific legal meaning to it.
Yeah,
Correct.
it ain't a good thing.
I'm sorry, Randy.
Many felonies as well as sexual related offenses or alcohol related offenses as well.
Thank you. And then on the door-to-door solicitation, I'm glad that came up again. Is that like the fella, I've never had a female that's coming around telling me that we're taking down trees in your neighborhood, or that you get a permit for that?
Yes,
And they're supposed to be wearing a lanyard with that.
Anything
correct?
that goes door to door, they should be wearing a city issued permit except for religious or political organizations. They can get a free permit from the city. There's no charge for those two. But for any businesses, they must be permitted. They must also provide us with their schedule of the neighborhoods they're going to.
Perhaps we'll get a special permit where Mike Palermo has to pay to go door to door.
All right. Any further question or comment regarding this item? Okay. All right. We'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Hills. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. And that is the final item on the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Mayor Wilson.
Sorry, motion to adjourn. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Wilson, second by Council Members Hills and Vanstrom. Any further? And so all in favor? All right, we shall be adjourned. Thank you very much. Anybody need a 5-minute break? I do. Okay. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break prior to the next committee meeting.
Did we go out of order today?
Yes. KRB.
Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee for June 14, 2022. I'm Randy Knighton, the City Administrator, here with Deputy City Attorney Michael Petty. And of course, we have our Mayor and Council, Mayor Wilson, Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Vanstrom, and Councilmember Hills. The purpose of the committee meetings for city departments to convey information to mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital information essential to the operation of city government. And by ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, council members, and city administrator. And it also determines that the city administrator serve as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, and therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, it's not a public hearing, and we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments and questions are received at the regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month and fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information from staff, please contact us. I would certainly encourage everyone to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. In particular, I'd highlight one or two items, one being the successful passage of the 2023 fiscal year budget. Appreciate the hard work of the mayor and council to have a transformational budget adopted. In addition to the several events upcoming in the city of Roswell, there will be the Braves Trophy Tour coming to Alive in Roswell this Thursday, June 16th. I don't think it's any coincidence as a lifelong Braves fan that they're currently on a 12-game winning streak. And the trophy will be here on Thursday. The city web service portal is also a mechanism to report issues and concerns. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes for the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting of May 10th, 2022. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Hill, second by Mayor Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. The next item under administration is consideration of a resolution to adopt the amended and restated ICMA RC Retirement Government 401 Money Purchase Plan and Trust. Thank you, Mr. Harner and Heidi. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all. Mr. Harner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. This is simply a request to move forward with adopting the amended and restated 401 plan with ICMA, doing business as Mission Square Retirement. There are actually no changes to the plan. This is a restatement which is required to be done every 6 years per the IRS. The IRS has a 6-year review schedule for 401 plans to ensure they are updated to reflect legislative and regulatory changes. So after a favorable opinion letter from the IRS, Mission Square Retirement is requesting we adopt the plan in accordance with these IRS regulations.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I move to, a motion to move forward on the consideration of the resolution.
All right. All right, that was a motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Motion passes successfully. Thank you very much.
On behalf of all our employees, we thank you. They can retire someday.
All right, next item, item number 3. Consideration to award a contract with Midwest Employers Casualty for 1 year workers' compensation reinsurance coverage with an annual premium of $149,993. Andrew and Heidi, thank you.
Andrew Ross, Employee Relations Manager with the HR, and Heidi Weiss is our Workers' Compensation Coordinator. So we're seeking the approval to, this contract to approve $149,993 to cover the excess workers' comp casualty insurance. Midwest is our provider. We do have with us for questions if needed Brandon Inslee with our author Jake Gallagher, who's our broker.
All right, thank you. Questions from Mayor and Council regarding this item? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Quick question, this is just a standard, this is just the annual contract, just being renewed, correct?
Yes, sir. It's excess over the self-insured amount.
600,000
Yeah.
for all employees and 650,000 for first responders.
This is just a contract, right? Yes, sir. This is,
Something we have to have, I believe.
right, this is the standard contract. We
Yes.
do this every year, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, forgive me.
You're fine, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move forward on this consideration.
Motion by Mayor Wilson. Is that a second by Councilmember Vanstrom? All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll move this item forward as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Under,
I have
yes,
one comment.
one comment. Yes, from
Before Mr.
Councilmember
Harner-
Hall.
Before Mr. Harner and everybody leaves, I just want to say that the news you can use is fabulous. I enjoyed reading that and seeing everybody's pictures. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. In item number 4, under
You guys are gonna stay any
finance.
longer?
That's why I had to get that
Yeah.
in.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Item number 4, under finance, consideration of the FY 2022 end-of-year budget amendment. We have Mr. Luckett and Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Good evening, everyone. After we just finished passing the budget for 2023 yesterday, we're here with the end-of-year budget for the current fiscal year, budget amendment. Typically, just to give you some background, and Lynn's going to walk you through
Can I
the
ask you a
details.
question, right? Mr. Chairman, there's an item, the 2022 Government Management Indicator, GMI survey required annually. It's underneath administration. Are we covering that? Did I see it before finance? Sorry, Ryan.
Thank you.
Did I miss that? I apologize.
No, you did not. That's actually an information item. So what this is a DCA required document that we have to do as a qualified local government every year. And as a part of, and it's a survey that goes out that asks us questions like how many personnel do we have? How many police vehicles? Do we do take-home vehicles? How many police? How is our finances handled? It's a survey of how we're organized and what our business is. We do it every single year. And part of that is that it has to be put out for a review. So I always put it in as an information item. You're welcome to look at it if you would like. It's in there so that I can check the box that said that it's put out for review. So it's put on as an information item. But thank you for asking. I should have mentioned that since you guys are seeing this for the first time, but it's a DCA required document that goes out every year.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, thank you, Mayor Wilson, for pointing that out as an information item. And certainly, if there are any questions or upon your review, the mayor and council, please convey that to the staff. Thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much. All right.
Yes, so this is the FY22 end-of-year budget amendment. And typically, this is really just kind of something we need to do to close out the fiscal year. We're cleaning up some things, we're recognizing some revenues that have come in over the year that weren't budgeted. There's a few different things with this year's end-of-year budget amendment. As you know, there were a couple of items that were initially in the FY23 budget that you all decided to move out of the 23 and into the 22 budget year. So you'll see those in just a moment. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lynn, and she can walk you through the details of what's included.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lynn. I am going to talk you through the items on the end-of-year budget amendment. So we'll group them by fund, and because we do have funds that transfer between one fund to another fund, you may see it on there more than once. We did try to label those as transfers so that you wouldn't be surprised when you see it a second time. So for the first line, we did recognize some additional TAVT revenue, and this is the title Agalorum Tax on vehicles. This is an increase of $600,000. On the occupation tax on the next line, this was not a change in the rate on 22, but because the gross receipts came in better for this year than they did last year. So we did have some additional revenue within 22 of $1 million. For the next line down, we have legal fees. These are costs that are
attributed to each of the legal cases that are going on. And for this particular year, we would like to add another $300,000 to that budget. The next line down is a transfer to capital projects from general fund. So that's just the transfer, and I'll have the detail on capital projects fund. The insurance reimbursement for fire vehicles, this is a transfer to fleet. These were 4 individual fire vehicles that were hit, and the insurance reimbursed us. So there is revenue and an expense of $29,454. So we are acknowledging the insurance reimbursement to us and the cost to repair that vehicle. We also are transferring it from general fund, which is where we recognize the revenue, but we're going to put it out in fleet fund, which is where the actual repair happened. The next line down is increased funding for credit card merchant fees in FY22. Within the current year, we do need an additional $50,000 for the merchant fees. As y'all had seen yesterday, the cost has been going up, and we have an additional expense here and in solid waste fund that we would like to recognize. Training and equipment purchase. I did have a typo on this line. I got excited for the 3D scanner on the next line. So it's not software and equipment purchase, it's training and equipment. So there's $20,000 in there for Command College for police department, and $25,000 for the vests that carry the load-bearing vests. These are also being funded by the school zone fines. So this has to be used for police purchases, and so the two of those two together, Command College is $20,000, and the load-bearing vests are $25,000. So that's $45,000 in total there. On the next line, I do have the 3D scanner for investigations. We are transferring this from general fund, from the school zone fines, to capital projects to do the actual purchase out in capital projects. The next line down is the savings and debt service funding. So this was the GTIB loan that we did for resurfacing in this year, but they have not started making payments on that $5 million yet. So we have a savings here, and we wanted to recognize that savings, decrease the budget, and use it in other areas. The insurance reimbursements related to property damage. This was primarily a bus shelter that was hit, and it was $34,000 to replace that bus shelter, and it was $21,900 that we received in reimbursement from the insurance. We also had 5 incidents of sign or pole damage and 1 insurance reimbursement for parks. And that would stay in general fund and be acknowledged within those departments. The increase in funding for fleet fuel expenses. I know everybody has noticed that there is an increase in cost that goes along with fuel right now. Our costs have gone up from February to May in our purchase of fleet gas has gone up by 33%. All right, so we move on to capital projects. Oh, cover the total. So the total revenue increase is $1.7 million, and the increase in expenditures here in general fund is $1.7 million, with a net difference of right around $30,000. The estimated available fund balance there is related to the 23, because we've already taken out, since 23 budget passed last night, we are showing only what was available beyond the 23 budget here. So this is the 244,472 that was fund balance in 22 that we didn't already take. And so that adds to get to the 273 available there in general fund. All right, and so any questions on general fund before I move to capital projects?
You gained $29,388, correct? Nicely done.
All right, in capital projects, the vehicle lease purchase, this is an auditing adjustment. This is related to the lease purchase of the enterprise vehicles on the vehicles less than 450 in size, like the F-150s, the Explorers and all of those types of vehicles. As we start those leases, we have to acknowledge the entire lease as an increase to asset, and then we pay on the actual lease. So this was the accounting audit adjustment to recognize the asset in last year. We're recognizing it now at the end of this year, and we'll do it again at the end of next year for the audit. The next one down is a transfer in from general fund, and that 1.3 helps us fund all of these projects below. The reprogramming of funding from capital projects, about half of that is coming from the Wi-Fi project. The other half is coming from some transportation projects to try and fund the Scott Road lighting as well. The computer replacement there, on the next item, this is one of those that we pulled from 23 into 22. So this is $450,000 that we're using to buy computer replacements. We are on, I think, a 4 or 5 year plan to replace the desktop computers. These are the non-public safety ones. The next one is develop city master plan. This was one of the items that was listed on your 100-day plan. And so this would give you funding towards that item. The next one is the cardiac monitor and defibrillator and chest compression device. This was moved from the 23 budget into the 22. And so that 802 will buy the entire replacement of all of the cardiac monitors and defibrillators and compression devices. And then we would replace it again in, is it 5 or 10? 8 years, yes. The fire vehicle replacements, the Rescue 22 and Rescue 24. This is, again, something that we had budgeted in the 23, and we've decided to move it into 22. So this 428 would purchase the replacements of Rescue 22 and the replacement of 24. The insurance reimbursement for storm damage here, this was not, it didn't hit general fund at all. It was actually coded the revenue here. This was Izzy storm damage. This relates to the CAC, that little cupola, the little roof thing over here that got hit with that jam. The gazebo, yes, sorry. And at Roswell Area Park, there was, believe it was the RAP Shelter 4 and the pavilion repair at RAP for Izzy storm damage. So this is 89 to repair those items, and the revenue from that insurance was received in here, and this hit our insurance plan. The 3D scanner for investigations, this is the recognition of the transfer from general fund for the school zone funding and acknowledging the purchase. The Scott Road lighting plan, this is something that was brought to y'all in January, and this would fund that lighting plan. Any questions on capital projects? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Would you remind us, the Scott Road lighting plan, is that something that we fast-tracked? Is that what that is?
Yes, I think the intent, if I recall correctly, was to try to seek opportunities or options for funding as soon as possible, given the course of the school year. I think it's in near Centennial High School. And so the thought was to try to move that forward as soon as possible. Yes.
Do we have a timeline on when that will be done? I mean, I know I'm talking to finance, and I should be talking to transportation.
No, I don't know that we have a timeline, but this does provide, I think they originally had looked at breaking it up into phases. This amount of funding fully funds the entire plan.
Fully funds the whole thing. It's just as soon as they can get out there and get it done.
right.
Hopefully they get it done before August.
Yeah, we'll get a timeline for you. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Yes.
They have started the purchasing process. They haven't gotten far, but they've started already.
Although it doesn't get dark till later in the school year anyway, so.
We'll take it before they get back, you're right.
Okay, so solid waste fund, we have 2 items that we would like to recognize in solid waste. The increase in revenue for sale of assets, we gained $65,000 on selling one of the trucks, and we had about 10 other sales of assets between $15,000 and $625 for each of those transactions. We did increase funding for credit card merchant fees here as well for $45,000. So the total is increase in revenue was $100,000. The expenditure increase was $45,000. So we are adding to the fund balance here in solid waste fund. Any questions on solid waste? Group benefits fund. We have a stop loss insurance here in the group insurance fund. And so when we have items that go above a certain threshold, we get stop loss reimbursement from our insurance on top of that. And we did also have a rebate revenue on some prescriptions. And so this is acknowledging that revenue and the increase in expenditures that went along with those costs. So it was an increase of $665,000 and an increase in expenditures of $665,000. No change to the fund balance. Any questions on group benefits? Okay. For fleet fund, the insurance reimbursement for fire vehicles that I talked about in general fund, this is that transfer that came in. The insurance came into general fund. We're transferring it, recognize the revenue there, but increasing as a transfer here for the actual expense. So $29,400 and $29,400. And it would not change the fund balance. Okay. Hotel motel fund summary. We are acknowledging some additional hotel motel tax revenue that has come in. The increase in revenue that we're showing here is $700,000, and because a portion of that is percentage-wise going to Roswell CBB, we would increase the expenditures to CBB here as well. So that is an increase in revenue of $700,000 and a increase in expenditures of $320,000. So we're adding $380,000 to the fund balance here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Just for clarity, the fund balance in this account of 626, which account does it move to in the city portion of it?
So it stays in the hotel motel fund until it's appropriated by you all, but we have to keep track of what category it's in, whether it's the unrestricted category or whether it's the tourism product development category. So we have that balance, and it's there available for the mayor and council to.
So this balance will be available as of now or as of July 1st, in addition to the budget that we passed.
Right.
Thank you.
For the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA fund, we would like to, y'all had recently signed an agreement for this boost grant from Georgia Recreation and Park Association for $23,000. That was on committee May 10th. And so we wanted to acknowledge the increase in revenue and increase in expenditures for that grant that we received for $23,000.
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
And what was the grant spent on?
I believe it was spent on out-of-school time boost program.
It's the adaptive programs, I think, correct?
Okay.
The summer programs.
Thank you. I've forgotten.
The T-SPOST fund summary, we are acknowledging some additional T-SPOST 1 and 2 revenue because of the economic boost. 5.9 in increase in revenue here. And so that would put the estimated fund balance at $9.4 million.
And just to clarify on this one, so at the time that we did the budget, for FY22, obviously we didn't know if T-SPOS 2 would have passed, so we budgeted enough revenue to carry us through the completion of T-SPOS 1. So this is recognizing the new T-SPOS 2 revenue as well as some additional revenue that we received.
Fantastic.
All right.
And this is the total summary of the changes and the net increase in revenue.
All right. Yes, having seen, that concludes your presentation? All right, thank you so much. Having seen these items, are there any questions from the mayor and council regarding these proposed budget amendments?
Just clarity, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
You basically gained $84,000 outside of Hotel Motel and Key Splost.
Right, with the general fund and solid waste fund.
To the good.
To the good.
Outstanding. Thank you.
All right. And this is an item that we would seek to move forward
Yes.
for formal approval. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Mayor Wilson, is that a motion
That
to
is a
move
motion,
forward?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir.
Thank you. Second, Councilmember Hall. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Finance Department. All righty. All right, that brings us to Recreation and Parks. Item number 5 on the agenda, consideration to approve a capital asset trade-in request. Mr. Leatherman?
Thank you, sir. In your packet, Mayor and Council, we have approval in our current budget year to replace a piece of equipment, piece of heavy equipment, backhoe, tractor. We have currently a similar piece of equipment from 1994. Normally, we would be going through kind of the surplus sale process, put it out for auction. We do have an opportunity with our vendor to trade that in and apply the value of $7,000 for the trade-in equipment to the purchase price. We do recognize that, we could potentially, if we were to put it out in the auction block, have a little bit more revenue associated with it or potentially less. It could sit in our yard for a while until somebody decides to pick it up. Just wanted to bring this option before you. We do recommend moving forward. It gives us an opportunity to see some value in that trade in and then also move it off of the property as part of the acquisition of the new piece of equipment. If you happen to entertain any questions, in the packet, we tried to find some comps. Couldn't find anything kind of regionally in the kind of near past of the last couple of years. We found some from 2021, 2020 that were a similar piece of equipment, just to give you kind of a general sense of where those have gone off on the auction and surplus sale percentage-wise.
Okay, yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Jeff, who handles this for you internally, this process?
So if we have a surplus process, that then we will transfer a surplus piece of equipment to the finance department, and then they handle the surplus process.
So I know this sounds like a splitting hairs. That's why I'm asking, is this a resource issue? Because he's offering you $7,000 or she's offering you $7,000. And I'm just looking, and I don't, I know not enough to spit about this.
Right.
But just looking at your examples, you've got two, and the one that looks like here from July 22nd, 2020,
Right.
right? So it's 2 years ago. Netted you another $2,200.
Yeah, and that wasn't us. That was somebody else. That
Yeah, no,
surplus. That's just what we could
somebody,
find.
you're just
Yeah.
using an example. And I'm just asking, and I know every dollar matters, and that's if it's an issue of resources, or there's somebody actually handles this or manages this, and it's when they're purview and it's not an extra load. Considering the marketplace, and I don't know what the marketplace is, but I'm assuming it's like everything else in the supply chain, that
Right.
there's value there. And you know this business infinitely better. So you guys said, look, I'll give you $7,000 on a trade-in, basically, right?
Correct.
Have we looked at trying to sell it?
We have not yet. We wanted to bring this option first. Our default is to go through the surplus property process. And we can certainly do that and put it out into the marketplace, and it may get scooped up relatively quickly. Pricing will go through the auction process. I'm really not as familiar with that side of functionally how that works. And then, whatever the sale price is at that point would be applied and offset in the general fund. So
It's just something that somebody could execute in half a day, 4 hours, in terms of a little bit of intentional work?
I don't know, Ryan, do you have a sense of just the process that's handled more out of the finance side?
Yes, the actual process of getting it out there and out for sale, that's no big deal. I mean, we probably usually post them for several weeks just to get the auction process going, so it's no problem.
Like managing this whole process, if you did this as an hour or 2 hours total?
Right. I mean, we're doing that with other equipment as well.
I would submit, if you don't mind, I'd submit, look for a couple hours. You get an extra $2,000, it's $1,000 an hour that you've invested for that hour, so probably not bad worthy. I mean, there's no downside, right, if you go chase an hour or two, is it?
Not chasing it an hour or two. I think just, I think from our perspective of you have the potential where nobody picks it up and then it's potentially sitting in our yard, taking up space. And that would be the downside of
Is this a
this.
take it or leave it offer right now from, I didn't understand that, so I apologize. So this guy, like if you said, look, I'm gonna go unbeknownst to, or even say, look, man, I'm gonna go see if I can get some more money for it, he's not gonna come back to you. He said, hey, you got a 24-hour timeline to get either accept my $7,000 trade-in or don't.
Yeah, we can go back to our current vendor and see if they've got a window of opportunity where they'll either hold their pricing on that $7,000 trade-in, or for us, it's about moving forward with the acquisition of the other piece of equipment, because right now we have a need for that piece of equipment for our projects, and we want to be able to get something that is functional on site. Right now, this piece of equipment isn't operational for our purposes of getting work done in our parks and facilities.
So is he a good enough vendor to say, look, man, give me a couple weeks, let me see if I can get more money for it. If I not, you'll take it for $7,000, right?
Right. In that case, we would still need mayor and council's approval to go through the direct sale process, I'm assuming, and be able to sell it to the vendor if we have gone through the acquisition, unless there's another way that we can go about that.
I mean, I think if we could move forward with this as an option,
Yep.
and let us go through the other process, that way we have approval. If this is the best deal, if it's not the best deal, then we can go the other route.
Mr. Chairman, I move forward with a motion. Yes, sir.
You still have that used Mini Cooper, or did you trade that in? You could include that.
I'm thinking about buying this myself.
You could put it in.
$7,001 tonight. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to move forward on the proposal with the caveat that we try to source, help me out here, my mind is,
The surplus,
We'll take a look at,
go through the.
go through the surplus property sale, first. Okay.
all right, we got it. Mayor Wilson is the motion. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Approves unanimously. Thank you. And then the final item, under Recreation and Parks, presentation of the City Hall and Smith Plantation Trail Plan.
So a previous committee meeting, probably about a month or maybe even 2 months ago now, there was a conversation on what the status of the City Hall Trail Connectivity Plan was. We had talked about this, I think, briefly as mayor and council were getting their orientation to all of the various projects that have been around my department for the past couple of years. And this one dates back to about 2019. And it was connected to the crossing that was recently installed by our transportation department on Highway 9. And the question at the time in 2019 was, how are we connecting the City Hall parking lots to that future crossing, or what is now our existing crossing? And what would that cost us to look at that trail plan and connecting City Hall, the Smith Plantation, and this new crossing? The point of this conversation is really just to bring you all up to speed on some various options that we explored at that time. If you have additional either questions or recommendations or additional information, we can take that direction from mayor and council and then bring information back, or however you'd like to proceed. And so I just want to run through a couple of items. Obviously, at this point, the Hawk signal has been installed. In 2019, we did some work with Terramark and surveying the property, and then worked on some conceptual plans. This is the layout of the current and potential future trail connectivity. On the right side of the screen, you see a phased approach of how we broke up the budget if we want to take some portions of the project in different capacities. I'm going to focus this presentation really on Phase 1A, which is the light blue color, which really connects the City Hall parking lot up to that Hawk crossing. Phase 3, which is the orange on the kind of the bottom of the screen, is really the existing trails. We have some ideas about enhancing some of those walkways and managing a lot of the root intrusion that we have in the brick paver system. And then going back one step, phase 1B is that connection over to Norcross and looking at how are we connecting that hawk signal down towards Norcross, and is that connection necessary or even desired as part of our future development of trails and walkability around the City Hall complex. Just some conceptual images that we started to look at. This is some ADA accessible parking that would be necessary around City Hall. Looking at some ways that we can connect the trail, but also provide some separation within the Smith Plantation, and really not only with wayfinding, but also with our design, orient people's direction of travel either towards the Canton Street corridor or onto the Smith Plantation, or back themselves up to City Hall, and trying to find a way to provide some kind of visual barriers like a 3 split railed fence, and also the orientation of lighting, which you'll see in a moment, and some of our sidewalks. We've been looking at different materials of what could possibly be used. We have some different colorations of the walkways just for discussion purposes and to be able to see that. What you'll see in the budget is really continuing the brick paver trail system that we currently have on City Hall throughout. And that's reflected in our budget estimates, that we wouldn't be looking at a concrete sidewalk or an asphalt sidewalk for our main components of the trail system, but that it would continue the brick paver look and feel like we do have around the Veterans Memorial area and the property in the back of City Hall.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
Where is this?
So this would be looking from the City Hall side. So if sitting here in the room, the area of the parking lot behind you would be adjacent to that. I'll explain the need for the ADA parking spots here in a moment, but that's part of the components that we're looking at. So essentially the trail system right adjacent to the parking lot on the City Hall side, and then how that would carry forward to the remainder of the trail system. Again, this is very conceptual in nature. We didn't do any heavy design work. This would be necessary at the hot crossing area. So you would have the beacon, Highway 9 at the bottom of the screen. We need a way to drop the elevation from the current street level down to the trail level at Smith Plantation. You've got about a 7 or an 8 foot drop depending on where you are. So we need to drop that trail with an ADA ramp in order to meet the accessibility requirements to get up to the hawk signal. There's a couple of ways that we can do that, and we do currently have path of travel up to the sidewalks on the City Hall property. But looking at some concepts, obviously a lot of the vegetation that is currently there is not reflective in this image. There's quite a few trees and some high shrubs and other things that would continue to remain. We'd have to do some vegetation removal in order to get the ramp in place. But you can imagine kind of the hawk signal right almost to where that person is standing up on the sidewalk, and then we would transition them down onto the trail system. Also looking at some conceptual images of wayfinding and how we would use some of the brick entry plaza design to orient people again onto the trail system up to Canton Street. This area right here would be that kind of circular area where we currently have an art installation and some just concepts of how we can use wayfinding there in the center. This would be heading up to Highway 9. This would be heading up to the hawk signal. This area would be heading into the Smith Plantation. Again, also giving us the opportunity to kind of close off these gates after the Smith Plantation property is closed in the late afternoon, evening, in a way just to control path of travel and traffic areas around our historic properties. Just another view of that similar type section. And so focusing in on that blue section again, this is that circular area that you saw right here. This is the ADA section and the parking right here on the City Hall lot, and then the hot crossing and the ADA transition along with the split railed fence that would run along that section of the trail. And I'll give you the budget numbers here in just a moment, just for conversation's sake. The conversation around these 2 parking spots, and Mayor, you asked that question here. Right now, the Smith Plantation ADA parking lot actually comes off of Highway 9, drives down an asphalt narrow driveway, transitions onto this brick patio, and then there's 2 parking spots right next to the Smith Plantation, about where number 6 is. As we look at bringing a trail system here with that elevation change that requires this ADA access point, the potential conflict of vehicles coming down this driveway and then pedestrians walking along that trail is problematic, because as you're making the transition down the driveway, you can't see pedestrians, especially if you're in a big or even a small car. And so our proposal is to eliminate this driveway access onto the property, supplement it with a couple of parking spots down here, and then we would provide path of travel from the parking lot onto the Smith Plantation property. And so that's generally the conversation that we've been working with at the conceptual level in order to facilitate some safety needs that we have in this location. As we look at Phase 1A, we put together a couple of different options from a scoping perspective. This is a limited scope, does not include the ramp down from the Hawk signal, and does not include the two parking spots. We can facilitate additional ADA parking already here on City Hall grounds. And so we would add the 8-foot wide pedestrian trail, as you saw in the image. We would add the split rail fence and pedestrian lighting along that trail section, along with some other components of just the construction process. Estimated totals are about just under $500,000 for that trail section. I'll give you the image just so you can see it. So that would include this trail section from right about here down through this area and down to this area right here. Again, not this ADA and not this transition on the ramp. We would leave the asphalt driveway in this location, but place some bollards here so vehicles couldn't drive down that section as a temporary infill until we move further on in the project. And then if we wanted to add in the alternates and include the ramp crossing and that parking, almost doubles the cost. Those two components are fairly expensive. Brings your total cost up for that section almost to just about $930,000. We pulled those numbers from our original estimates in 2019, added an inflator just to make some assumptions for this conversation to get us pretty close to what we think the price point would be. The total for all alternatives, thinking about 8-foot sidewalks in all these sections, as well as the connectivity to Norcross, current estimates are about $2 million for those areas of improvement based on brick pavers for this type of project. Again, this is an information item just to provide council an update and be happy to take any questions or any other items that you may need to facilitate this.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
So I know the drop is, it's pretty steep drop there in most of that area. Is there any way to consider a suspension type of walkway, so it's almost a walk through the trees? I know that those have been done, ADA. I've seen those done in Canada and some other areas that I've been, and that would avoid perhaps cutting down some trees. It would avoid concrete. It would be more natural. Just a thought. I just thought it'd be really cool to have a walkway through the trees, and as you go down.
Yeah, I was in Gatlinburg not too long ago, and they have a beautiful suspended walkway and bridge section through there. It's a little bit more narrow than an 8-foot. It's probably closer to a 6-foot walkway section. I don't know quite the accessibility of it, but it was similar to that kind of look and feel. Didn't price anything like that out, but happy to take questions and directions, and we can chase that question. Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Would you describe the lighting, what that looks like?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we looked at kind of a lot of questions about kind of lighting from this section of City Hall, obviously all the way up here to Highway 9. And then as we look at trail installation throughout this corridor right here. And in previous conversations and conversations that we've had around the office, really the intent is how do we create a path of travel that is well lit, that people feel comfortable walking, especially later into the evening and into the afternoon. And so the Historic District Master Plan and some of those documents give us a couple of options for lighting. And what we've spec'd out is using similar lighting that we already have on Canton Street on the walkways, which are the elevated lights, LED down, at 50 foot on center, which essentially would eliminate any of the shadows in that park section, or in the trail section, excuse me, along these walkways. And that is currently spec'd out in the budget. I think it's roughly about $80,000 total for the lighting in that corridor. We also looked at increasing the lighting in this section as part of that first and preliminary budget. There's a couple of light poles. They're spread a little bit differently underneath the string lights. Some of them are 45 foot on center. Some of them are as much as 75 foot on center. We would clarify and clean all that up for consistency at that 70 foot on center throughout that corridor, from the parking area up to Highway 9, and then from this location all the way out to the Hawk signal as well.
Yes, Councilmember Hill.
Sorry, one other thing.
Yeah.
Wayfinding, directional signage, anything, not crazy, but, or what are you thinking there?
Yeah, and it hasn't been fully vetted out, but part of our kind of lighting and then the pedestrian trail and this Hawk entry plaza and ramp, this obviously is not the ramp itself, but this would also be wayfinding. We would look at that as part of the overall project and orienting community members not only to what's on City Hall property if they're heading to the Memorial, to the Smith Plantation, but also that clarity on where they're headed to from the crossing, Hawk Signal, up to Highway 9. And would look to council or anybody else who would want to give us some more specific direction on what does that look like overall. You know, we've got kind of our historic district signage that we have around, which is the black signs, white lettering, and would want to match whatever goals and objectives the council may have for that.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, right here on this limited scope, not including ramp to crossing or parking, where's the Central Plaza?
The Central Plaza, it's a great question. We've got a component of it right here of this Hawk Entry Plaza. And then I think it's built into this cost of the pedestrian trail. There's some subunits of that. I can go back and take a look.
I mean, it looks so cool on this particular, that's why
Yeah.
it looks like it would be a little more expensive, obviously, right? And then, because obviously that's a new feature there with the Central Plaza. And
Correct.
Is that a 2-foot brick wall, I'm guessing?
Yeah, a little seat wall there.
Yeah, little seat wall.
That's correct.
2 foot or 3 foot. But I didn't see it there in the costing, so I didn't, because that looks pretty cool, obviously.
Yeah, I can double check. You know, if the council is looking at moving any of this forward at any time in these conversations, if there's components, we have a number of images associated with the conceptual design that I didn't include here. We can continue to vet that out, and if there's components that we are confident or that y'all want to make sure that we include in that budget capacity and into the project, we can make sure that we do that as we move forward with any sort of the discussion.
The pavers, is this plan, is this all brick pavers or it's not? Because it doesn't look like it it looks like it's lined with brick paver.
Correct. So we priced out a couple of different options as we were going through the conceptual phases in 2019 and 20. What you saw in the budget is the budget options for only brick pavers. So some of the imaging shows kind of this combination of concrete and brick. You get about a $4 price savings per square foot on that kind of component. And so we were just looking at different options,
So just for everybody's edification, it wouldn't look like that based upon the pricing you've got. What it looked like is the brick pavers up on the top left-hand side.
Yes, sir.
And then if you were to do that, which is the alternative method, you'd save about $4 a foot.
Yeah, give or take.
So roughly,
Yeah, you're talking $200,000, I mean, you're talking probably in this component, $40,000 or so in the overall project scope. And as we were looking at that and evaluating it from a staff perspective, we're here in our historic district. We have committed to the sidewalks as we go in and rebuild and modify sidewalks within the historic district into that brick paver look. In my mind, for that, I would say relatively nominal cost savings, we would continue to look forward and recommend the brick paver look.
these brick pavers look like this versus kind of what we have down now in the city grounds, city hall grounds, or will they exactly match what we have in city hall grounds? Or will they, because that's a little different look. It looks great.
Right. They would match what we have in the city hall grounds that we have now. You can't ever get a perfect match on color whenever you're doing brick, but it would, size, shape would match what we have down at city hall grounds.
Councilmember Hall.
I think it would be fun to sell bricks.
Absolutely. I'll have a lot of bricks to sell at this point.
Yeah. All right.
So what's required of us tonight on this?
This was a presentation for informational purposes. Obviously, if there is additional information that you would like for us to provide to you, or if there is any direction at this point you would like to provide, we'd certainly want to receive that from you. Yes, Councilman, I saw Councilmember Vanstrom first. I think
Ladies first, go ahead. I just was wondering, Mr. Chairman, if we could at this point take 2 or 3 minutes to talk about, since that picture was up that keeps going away.
There you go.
Some of those short-term options for getting to the crosswalk, if we needed that during construction phases on Canton Street, since we have the pictures and Jeff's expertise, is that okay or not?
Yeah, I think,
Can I ask for a clarification? Are you asking kind of like a timing question?
We had looked at this before, and right now we have construction going on, projected for the West Alley on Canton Street that's going to take up a substantial number of parking spaces. This project will not be completed. That's scheduled for, I mean, it keeps getting pushed back like everything, but it's
West Alley?
yeah, could be end of summer, could be early fall. Trying to anticipate some of the lighting issues we have to get people where they need to go. And one of the comments that Mr. Leatherman made was utilizing the trails currently. Ladies who are wearing evening shoes are having more trouble walking on those trails, and the lighting is insufficient. So we started talking about some options for short term. And I just thought, since the picture was here, he could kind of update you guys on maybe that as an option to alleviate some of the problems we have so people can get from the parking lot to the crosswalk in the short term.
Let me ask you, can I ask a follow-up on that question? So if, for example, let's say you approve, the council mayor, you approve this whole thing, got it done with the council, $2 million. How long would it take to get done?
you're about 12 months in with the procurement process and design to do the whole thing.
So 0 to hero, you could have this done. This went to council. It could be done, it could be by mid-July, August 1st next year.
Yeah, you'd be substantially complete.
Is that where you're kind of going?
A much shorter term. That circular area right there is paved. I just wanted him to point that out and describe that.
Yeah, so Councilmember Vanstrom is talking about, this is an old driveway section that was originally accessible into the Smith Plantation. You've got a combination of paving, kind of runs, that's the old driveway, right along here. And then it also transitions, that we've covered it with a crush and run, which is kind of that granite, decomposed gravel feel around this space in a couple of different iterations to try to keep compaction as consistent as possible. You know, it's fine for walking in on tennis shoes, flat shoes. It gets a little difficult to walk if you're in heels or something elevated with a heel chunk or anything like that. You know, we've got the string lighting that was put in kind of the City Hall area that runs up this portion. And then we've also got some street lights in this area right here to facilitate traffic and travel, pedestrian travel from here up to the crossing at Highway 9, which is the double crossing. So you could look at some options to try to facilitate traffic from where the art is right here, along the property, and then up. I think the challenge that we've looked at in this location is that you can't see at night, you can't see straight through where you're going. And so I think that probably lends itself that people aren't going to choose that path of travel. You could look at some lighting options, but as soon as we start to enhance the lighting in this space, it's not our long-term recommendation for the best path of travel. And so now you're potentially spending a lot of money in this area to light an existing trail that then eventually you're going to come in and move it over to this trail if you ever build it into the future. And so I think that's some of the challenge with the existing kind of vegetation growth and trails that are here. It can be done, but my concern is are you potentially, maybe creating a short-term opportunity for higher lights, higher traffic, higher visibility that people may or may not feel comfortable using.
To Peter's point, what would it cost if you basically your temporary lighting an area? String lights. Yeah.
you're probably into the $60,000-$70,000 range for string lights and lights, just like we are right now.
And you can do it relatively quickly though, right? You could light this up within a month or two.
The feedback that I've heard from the string lights is it's not adequate. That people don't like. They still feel that they're muted in a way that doesn't provide that bright look and feel. And so that's why we've spec'd out really the pedestrian street lighting that you would have on a sidewalk just to brighten it up.
You do it right. In this,
Correct.
In this other plan. But you could light that for $60,000 or $70,000, and that would be more lighting than what we have. That would be more compressed lighting than what we have currently. So it might be a little more intense. Is that kind of where you're going, Peter?
Yeah, and the other feedback that I'm getting from residents who would prefer to use a trail is maybe a police presence would feel a security, some sort of manned manual person that's present for security.
Yes, Councilmember Hall, Councilmember Hills? Please,
How does that play into the hours of operation for Smith? I mean, this would be a special use, obviously, but is that a consideration, having people over that direction? Like, if you had an officer, obviously, that could be part of the beat, I guess, but, I mean, is that something that needs to be?
Yeah, we generally close our historic asset operation down 4 or 5 o'clock for the museum tours. We'll have special events and special activities. And the concept that you see here in providing that split rail fencing is to discourage people from accessing that portion of the property. Because once we start to close down late in the afternoon, early evening, our preference is to focus people's energy on the trail system up towards Canton Street or facilitate them as quickly as possible back down to the City Hall parking area where they started. And keeping them out of the Smith area. My concern would be, do we create habits of people over the next couple of years for a temporary use that causes them to continue to use the Smith Plantation and those trail systems? And then, once you get kind of back into the building area back in here, you're really hidden from anything around this property. So even if we have, staff or people doing a drive-by, even driving these portions of the trail or pulling into the back of this parking lot, at this time of the year, it's pretty dense back in that space, and it's pretty easy to hide. We know that we have people kind of back in this property area in the evenings already, and PD is great about helping with that. But if we were to facilitate traffic and kind of encourage it with lighting, we may start to see more people in and around this space in the evening time.
Councilmember Vanstrom?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Jeff, because I think I just wanted this to be public, to have this discussion, to show the difficulties and the limitations. The way I see this in the short term is just making sure that we make it as easy as we can to get to the intersection that's in existence, that straight path on the bottom, and then up the sidewalk that is already in existence. And encourage that use. That's the solution I see because of the difficulties when you get to Smith Plantation, as you explained to me when we privately discussed this. So thank you for bringing that up. I just wanted to make sure that we all kind of covered that.
All right, thank you.
But you're in favor of kind of this trail improvement project?
I'm in favor of the trail improvement project, yes. Yeah.
So
it just for the budget. Yeah, it's just like.
Never know.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Sell bricks like crazy.
While we're selling bricks, we have so many creative people in Roswell, and I've often thought when we get little projects like this, I'd love to see what residents that are perhaps architects or engineers or doodlers, if they could come up with some ideas to offer some alternatives. Just sometimes we're so inside the box.
Sure.
I don't know if we have opportunities to do that, and I guess this is discussion, so I'm bringing it up in discussion.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Concludes the presentation. At this point, is there any further comment or direction from Mayor and Council? Certainly, we can entertain any further questions via staff that you may have regarding this item, but it does seem that there is a desire to move forward in some fashion and quickly. Okay, suspension option.
How long will
All
that
right.
take, Jeff?
So if we're actually contracting, having somebody conceptually look at a suspension option, I'd have to just look out into I have no idea. I've never dealt with that as far as who do I go and ask to design a suspension option, walkway, bridge. Yeah, even costs, we could potentially pull, I'm aware of just a couple. They usually end up more, kind of in the private sector. You see them in amusement parks and those kinds of things, probably a little bit more frequently. And then there's some really cool suspension bridges that come out of kind of more natural areas and other spaces. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking in the back. We can have really rustic. Right. It can be very unique. I think that is a great way to put it. I know that our friends over at Nanahala Outdoor put some suspension walkways in one of their properties up in North Carolina that they use as more of like a kids play area that they suspended out in the trees, and so I can at least get some sense from them on what they've done.
Part of it can be that, and once you get down to elevation, you transition into your trail.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You almost, you kind of take this area right here, and make almost a 45, and then start it. It chases the elevation of the walkway down. So.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Just our friends at CNC. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They just did something incredibly cool. Have you been there? Yeah. It's not on. Just hit it once. Yeah, that's so cool what they did at CNC.
Right.
I mean, that's to your point. It's very ingenious.
Yeah, they've got a pylon-driven system there, and so we can take a look at just the cost per square foot that it costs.
They might have an architect that take us down the
Great
path.
idea.
I mean, obviously that might be, I don't think you're talking about pylons, but you're talking about some kind of cool.
Ours is 7 feet. It's not,
30.
Yeah.
30 like theirs is, so.
Yeah.
It is. Good
Well,
idea.
it seems like we've got some homework items that we need to provide back to you in terms of information. Is that correct? And certainly, given, I believe, the sentiments that I've heard, we want to try to move this along fairly quickly in terms of bringing back that information to you for your consideration. All right?
Next week.
And some funding options as well.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. All right. That concludes the committee meeting for this evening. If there's no further business to conduct, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Hill, second by Councilmember Vanstrom. All in favor? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, sir.